Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Flagrant Talk Sports Podcast. It's me, your host, Isaiah, doing it solo. Moses did a World Series preview. Our schedules were kind of, messed up. So we're both doing some solo content, which is dope. So if you haven't seen his World Series video, check it out. 100%. It's great. The video I will be doing for y'all today, as you read by the title, is I'm going to give one question I have for every team in the Eastern Conference. Um, Quick caveat, I will not say health. Health is a factor for every single team. It doesn't matter if you're a contender or if you're the worst team in the league, health is going to play a factor. So, I'm just going to get that out of the way right now. You could say that for any team. If the Celtics lose Tatum, right? If the 76ers lose Embiid, if the Bucks lose Giannis or Dame, that totally tints their season. So I'm going in with a genuine question I have that's normally roster based. Start this off, I will be going division by division, starting with the Atlantic Division. The first team I will discuss is the Boston Celtics. In their first two games, this is what I've seen so far. Very solid. That top six is electric. That is really, if the Celtics are able to go all the way, it's that Porzingis came out that first game, balled out, was incredible, knocking three balls down, a great rim protector, which is really important for the Celtics, obviously without Robert Williams. But the biggest question I have is who outside of that top six can really elevate their game? I don't know what the rotation will be come playoff time for Boston, but probably I'm thinking the core six, obviously, and then maybe balloon it out to like eight. Uh, so who are those other guys, right? Peyton Pritchard is going to have an opportunity with the team to grow into a role. Sam Hauser, if he can stay consistent, be a threat at knocking down the three ball, can he get some rotational minutes come playoff time? Um, I'm just really curious about who else is going to step up for Boston because that top six is the best in the league, in my opinion. Um, that feels pretty safe to say, but it's who outside of that is really going to step up to elevate the Celtics to where they want to go. Um, the next question with the Toronto Raptors, do they have enough? Um, it sounds simple, but it really is that. So on paper, they have really solid pieces, right? I'm a big Scotty Barnes fan. I think he has the potential to really blossom into an all-star and a leader for the Raptors team down the line. But I don't think he's that right away. OG Anunoby is a great defender. He would be, he's a guy a lot of teams around the league, especially contenders, have had interest in trading for. Do they hold him? Do they trade him? What's the move there? Obviously, losing Fred Van Vliet. They just have pieces. They have good pieces, but as a whole, are they good enough to be a playoff team? They have the talent, and I think that, they could buy in and trade for some pieces and see if that will help fill out their roster. But as of now, I don't feel confident. Going back to the playoff video, I had them missing out. I think I had them as my 11 seed. If they made the play-ins, wouldn't shock me at all. But I'm just, I don't know. I really don't know how to feel about this Raptors team, and it's kind of weird. Um, the next team, Philadelphia. This is one of those ones where the question is very, very easy. James Harden. What is going to happen? There's no doubt in my mind the Sixers are a better team with Harden. Tyrese Maxey has looked like an all-star to start the season. He has been incredible. If you haven't seen Maxey play this season, he looks great. He's so quick. His scoring looks dynamic. He's scoring from everywhere, and he's scoring in bunches. I have no doubt that, he could blossom into an all-star in this league year in and year out. But what do you do with Harden? Um, he's made it clear with Daryl Morey and management that he isn't happy there, which Now, if you're Joel Embiid and you're, looking at what your future looks like, this could be a pivotal moment for the Philadelphia 76ers franchise, how you handle this. You more likely than not, I'd say like a 90% chance, you will not get a star back for Harden. I'll go 99. You're not going to get a star back for Harden. So, what pieces can you get to continue being a playoff team, to continue being a solid team, um, and not fall out of this thing, right? Because they have the talent. Tobias Harris is solid. Embiid is, coming off an MVP season. Maxey has blossomed. Bring some dogs in with Pat Bev and things of that nature. But it's going to fall on Harden, whether he plays or not, and what you get back for Harden if you are able to trade him at some point during the season. So that's what I got for the Sixers. A pretty self-explanatory one. Boring, but it really is the number one thing. The next one I have, another one, Ben Simmons with the Brooklyn Nets now, talking about the Brooklyn Nets. I have gone on the record to say that I believe in Ben Simmons. People have called me a fool for it. That's all right. I don't think that he will be an all-star this season, as I said previously when talking to him, anything like that. I'm not being unrealistic, but what I have seen so far is him kind of go into, in a type of way, a Draymond Green type of role with the Brooklyn Nets. And that's exactly what the team could use, right? Just a playmaker, guy who's able to rebound well, having a guy who is a big, who's a taller guard, but now plays more of like a power forward position, be able to dribble the ball up, run pick and rolls and things like that as the primary ball handler. I love it. I really think that if the Nets are able to get into the playoffs this year, he is the reason why they do or do not. So that's the one I have for the Brooklyn Nets. And it's an exciting, team. And through the first couple games for Simmons, he looks solid. He looks comfortable and he looks confident out there. And that's the biggest thing. So if you're a Nets fan, you are really rooting that Ben Simmons can get it going and be a factor, be a guy who is in your core rotation. And so far, he's looked decent, which is great. Now going to the last team in the Atlantic, the New York Knicks. The question I have is, what season are we getting from Julius Randle? I feel confident that Jalen Brunson is going to continue playing at an all-star guard level, right? He is amazing. He really, really blossomed in his first year in New York, and I don't see any reason why that would slow down going forward. But his Robin, essentially, or his Batman, however you see it, with Julius Randle, they can only go as far in the postseason as those two can take them. I really like their bench. I love Emmanuel Quickly. I love Josh Hart. Dante DiVincenzo is a really solid pickup. Mitchell Robinson is just a double-double guy, a guy who's going to score at the rim. He's going to get you some lobs, basic things, and just rebound the hell out of the basketball. I like the Knicks with that, but it doesn't matter. There's a ceiling there. If Randall is playing at an all-star level, though, if he is a guy who, is able to drop 25 consistently and shoot the ball efficiently and be a threat to knock down some three balls every here and then, that could go a really long way. I don't look at the Knicks as a contender, but I do look at them as a very sound and solid team that could 100% win a series and that could shock people come playoff time. I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about the Knicks, as crazy as that is, and I really like their roster. So it can ultimately only go as far as Randall, Brunson, and those two leaders can take them. So that's what I've got for the Atlantic Division so far. The next one, the Central. Let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are a team I had as my third seed projecting out in the Eastern Conference. Donovan Mitchell has looked like a dog coming out this season, which makes me happy. I think he's got something to prove, and I love it. But the question is their wing problem solved? It was the glaring hole of their roster last year. As great as it was with Garland really stepping up, as Mitchell blossoming, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. The wing help was not really there. So now Max Strus comes in and he balls game one of the season. And that is a scary sight for teams around the league, because if Max Strus can, blossom into a solid 3-point shooter, it could be scary. It could be scary. If he can remain consistent throughout the season in that starting lineup, that's great. They also added Niang this season as well in the offseason and free agency. He's another guy who can knock down the three ball. We saw it with the Sixers. He was getting playoff minutes as well. If those two can step in and be, solid players, if Isaac Okoro can be solid more as, blossoming off the bench and being a solid defender and a pest on the defensive end, I think the Cavs can be, a surprise team to make the Eastern Conference Finals. I'm not saying they're better than the Bucks, because they're not. I'm not saying they're better than the Celtics, because I don't think they are. But I think they have the opportunity, if things fall their way, to make a run there. So the biggest thing, though, is can their wings, shape up in a way that's able to elevate them through the playoffs. Going now with the Indiana Pacers, my biggest question is, how does their rotation shape up, right? We saw it where Aaron Nesmith took arguably his best game of his career so far, and it came this season with the Pacers. They have a lot of really solid players, obviously led by the likes of Tyrese Halliburton. But how does that roster shape up, right? Because I think the Pacers are a team that 100% can make the playoffs. I believe I had them as my 8 seed, 7 to 10, somewhere in that range. But I think it was an 8 seed. So how far can that rotation take them? What is their lineup going to look like towards the tail end of the season? Do they trade Buddy Hield? I know that contract extension essentially fell through, so that's out the way. Do you move him because he's an electric 3-point shooter? He could probably fetch you maybe a first on the open market. I think that is at least his value, right? Or do you keep him and you say, listen, we probably lose him, but we think that this team can make the playoffs and he can help us get there, and it would be good for Halliburton to get some playoff experience, so we're going to stick it out? I don't know. I really don't know, but I do know the Pacers have some talent and are a team that could, without a doubt, make the playoffs in the East. So how does that roster shake up is the biggest thing I'm wondering. The last one, or not the last one, excuse me. The next one, the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously getting Damian Lillard, Giannis. That game one was incredible. Dame time. Come on, baby. But the biggest question I have is, what is their defensive identity, right? They're still a very good defensive team. And listen, if you have the opportunity to trade for Damian Lillard, you do it 10 out of 10 times. He's that good of a player. Him with Giannis, obviously getting the 3-year extension in Milwaukee for Giannis, big. It's a very big move by the Bucks. That's a massive win, right? Mo and I haven't had the opportunity to talk about it. Massive win, and Lillard getting there is the biggest thing. However, what is the defensive identity like without a Drew Holiday? We know Brook Lopez is a great defender. Giannis is a DPOY contender every year. He's so good. But in terms of guards, Drew Holiday was really able to guard 1 through 3. And if he gets matched up on a bigger offensive player, he's a pest. He's so good at ripping the ball, at getting contact on the ball. And that's what makes him so deadly. So without that, what is the identity of this Bucks team on defense? Because we know offensively, they're going to score in bunches. Giannis and Dame can combine for 70, at any point, maybe even more. Brook Lopez can knock the 3 ball down. Chris Middleton, I think, will have a bounce back year. There was a lot going on for him last season. So I think this season, hopefully, he could stay healthy and things will go right. But the defensive end of the ball is the thing that, for me, is going to separate them from winning a chip or coming in second or third. We know how talented they are, but the defense is the question I have. The next team I have, the Detroit Pistons, a young team in this league. Um, how far can Cade Cunningham take them is my question. How good can Cade Cunningham really be? I think he has all-star written all over him, right? He was the number one overall pick for a reason. He is incredible with that size, that strength, that athleticism. His playmaking ability is great. He's a guy who could easily drop 25 on any given night. He's a very, very solid player. But that Pistons team is so young, and I love Jalen Duren, one of my favorite big men in the league. I like Jaden Ivey. I think he's a guy who, could blossom into a solid player. They add some vets onto that roster. But without Cade Cunningham, right? If he's not on the court or if he's not able to take a step, which I think he will, the Pistons can only go so far. Maybe even missing play-ins. So I think if the Pistons do want to make the playoffs, if they want to, make some noise and have their name discussed more in playoff conversations, Cade Cunningham is going to have to be the star to step up to do that. The next team and the last team in the Central Division, the Chicago Bulls. This is a pretty easy one. What is their direction? Me personally, I've talked about this. I harped on it with the Wizards before they dealt Beal and Porzingis. It's kind of the same thing with the Bulls. What do? I think that, if it's me, you look to blow the team up, right? No Lonzo Ball the entire year. Zach LaVine's only getting older. DeMar DeRozan's only getting older. Vucevic is only getting older. You have these really solid pieces that contending teams or playoff teams or teams looking to, acquire another star and see if they can get their name in the playoffs are going to look to make moves to get these guys. But the Bulls have been unwilling to do so almost. So what do? Can they be good enough come the deadline where they're look to be a playoff team and they go, hey, we're going to stick it out. We're going to roll the dice and maybe we can keep him in free agency. Maybe we can hold the team intact another year. Or do you have the guts when it comes deadline time to go, listen, we got to make moves. We got to trade DeRozan or we got to trade LaVine or we got to trade both in separate deals. Or listen, we love Caruso. He's a great defender, but man, this contending team really, really would like to add him. We might have to bite the bullet and let him go, right? With the intent that, Lonzo's going to be here next year. So the ultimate thing is I just don't know what this Bulls team is. I have zero clue. So what do they do going forward? Do they blow it up or do they stick it out? The next division and the last division for the East, the Southeast division, starting with the Miami Heat. It's a complicated team to talk about because on paper, they're good. They're a playoff team, but they're not a contending team. But come playoff time, we know Jimmy Butler is going to play at an all-NBA first team level. We know it, right? That's how good he is. We know Bam Adebayo will step up and give you 20 a game and be a solid defender. We know these things. But who else can step up? That is my question for the Miami Heat. It seems to happen every year, right? We talk about that Heat culture, about, the way they develop their players, the way that their players blossom in big moments. And it's true. It's talked about a lot for a reason. It's a fact. But who else can step up, right? Tyler Hero has looked really good to start the year. He has been balling on offense. He is so good at coming off those screens and just putting it up, getting a nice take, getting separation, and hitting a big three for the Heat. Who else is there? Who else is going to be a factor? Is Jaime Jaquez as a rookie, as an older rookie, going to be a guy come playoff time where they can count on for some key rotational minutes when they're sitting some of those starters? Can Kyle Lowry still be a solid veteran guard for the team? These are kind of just the things I'm wondering because I know what Jimmy Butler does. I'm a Celtics fan. I see it every playoffs, right? I know what, their star power is, but who is going to step up to help mold the team, to help, alleviate some of the responsibility from Jimmy and Bam? So that's kind of what I'm wondering from the Heat. Um, as for the Magic, what happens with their guard rotations, right? They have Jalen Suggs. They have Cole Anthony. They have Markelle Fultz. They have Gary Harris. They drafted Anthony Black. They drafted Jet Howard. Mo and I kind of talked about this when discussing the playoff team, but how does their guard rotation work out? Who ends up on the chopping block? They just signed Cole Anthony to an extension. I believe it's 3 years, pretty certain. So it seems like Cole Anthony is probably safe. Anthony Black, obviously safe. Chet Howard, obviously safe. But just names I wanted to bring up before. So is it a Jalen Suggs that gets dealt? Is it a Markelle Fultz? What kind of happens, right? Because they're a good team with a lot of upside, obviously, off of their forwards with Paulo and Franz Wagner, two great players, two all-star caliber players in this league. But who else is able to step up and elevate that team to where they want to go? Um, so yeah, I'm really curious about that guard rotation. The next team, the Charlotte Hornets. Listen, this one I want to say is what the hell is going on with their culture? What is happening with that? Because it's really bad over there, right? Like, if you want to say Heat culture is like a 10 out of 10, like that's what teams in the league are striving for. Hornets are probably the other end of that spectrum in the Southeast Division. Um, so that's my, big question. But the one I want to offer is, can they bounce back? People forget in the 2021-2022 season, they went 43-39 and were a playoff team. Can they bounce back to that? Last season was very disappointing, but obviously injuries were a big factor. Miles Bridges and that whole situation that he has gotten himself into obviously played a factor. Melo being injured was the biggest one, but if they can stay healthy and Melo can play at an all-star level, which he's capable of, can they bounce back? Right? Can they get the job done? Um, I'm not very certain. I personally don't think this is a play-in team, but I think when you're asking questions for a team like the Hornets, that's the place my mind goes because 2 seasons ago they look pretty decent. They look like a playoff team. Last season was a disaster, but they added Brandon Miller, and hopefully he can be a developmental piece for that organization. But we'll have to see. Um, the next team, the Atlanta Hawks. The question I have is, do they need a third star? So I was a Trae Young defender this offseason, right? He has caught a lot of slander, especially from the Team USA situation. But do they need a third guy, right? With DeJounte Murray and Trey, they have really solid pieces, right? Clint Capella's a double-double guy, amazing rim protector, lob threat, even though he did cost his team the game a couple days ago by missing some lobs, some key lobs late in the game. But do they need a third guy? They were linked to Pascal Siakam this offseason. Nothing has materialized, but if the Raptors are bad and the Hawks are kind of mid, do they take that leap? Do they look to trade for a disgruntled star come deadline time, right? Obviously, Harden's a no-go. They don't they don't need another guard for one, and he doesn't really fit that roster. But if there is a star that gets disgruntled, do they go, listen, we're going to trade some young pieces. We're going to trade some picks, and let's go see how far Trae Young can really take a team with some talent, with some all-star talent next to him. So I think that is my biggest question for the Atlanta Hawks. Do they need to make another big move to go from like a play-in, borderline 6 seed to a 4 or 5 seed that's solidified in the East in a team that people are talking about Similar to how I kind of view like the Knicks, right? Where like I just think they're a sound playoff team out east. I think the Cavs are a sound playoff team out east. What do the Hawks do, right? Do they take that leap? And the final team to talk about, the Washington Wizards. Now, there's a good chance that this ends up being the worst team in the league, and that's okay. I commended them this offseason for blowing their team up, so that makes me very happy. It was something they had needed to do really since John Wall and Bradley Beal were a tandem, and Wall, sadly, with injuries and things like that, weren't able to stay on the court. They've needed to blow that team up in DC, and they kept trying to make it work, couldn't make it work. So they blew it up. That makes me happy. I'm not a Wizards fan, so if you're a Wizards fan and you feel differently, totally understandable. But my thing is, how do their players develop? They're a young team with some young talent who so far has been fun to see, right? Like, even if they're not the best, Jordan Poole just having free reign to shoot the ball at a high volume and things like that, pretty entertaining. Kuzma as well. But they have some other pieces there, right? With Bilal, with, you know, some of their other young talent on that team. Can they develop? Can Corey Kispert take another step, right? He's in his mid 20s, but he's still a guy who looks to have a nice future in this league. So, how do they develop their talent? And, if they end up with the first overall pick next year, and I do the same video next year, or Mo does, this will be the same question. But I like the direction of the Wizards. It'll take a couple years to see if that pans out, but I love them blowing their team up this offseason. So that's it for every team in the Eastern Conference. A question for every team. Let me know your question for your favorite team or any other team, or in a response to anything I've said in this video. I appreciate y'all watching, especially the solo content, and I hope y'all have an amazing rest of your day. I will see y'all in the next video. Peace.